Good morning to all of you, and thank you for joining us this morning. We are pleased to have everyone here. I'm Anton Thayalan, the Chief Evangelist for Luminary Learning Solutions, and I will be the voice of the webinar this morning. We welcome you to the new and improved Season 3 of Reset and Go. In continuation with Saturdays of Learning with Luminary, we present Revive and Thrive. As the saying goes, gear up to get your learning on. In today's segment of Revive and Thrive, we are discussing the topic social media, its impact on brands, a conversational exchange of real experiences and validated ideas on which to leverage your success and truly thrive. Our subject matter experts this morning, and we are truly honored to have them on the panel, are Ahamed, Aroos, Chief Operating Officer for Rainco Private Limited. Joining him is Anushka Polonovita, Chief Operating Officer for Drive One Private Limited, also agents for Audi. And our guest joining them this morning is Tharindu Amarasekara, Founder and CEO, TAC Brand Design and Communication Agency. Steering the conversation this morning is Safra Anver, trainer with Luminary Learning Solutions. And getting them to dive right in, Safra, over to you, please.
Thank you, Anton. So just for us to understand where everyone on this panel is coming from, Aroos, why don't you just tell us what do you use as social media for your brand?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Hope you can hear me loud and clear. Yeah, I think before I just dive into the subject matter straight away, thank you very much for the Luminary team, Anton, Vidusha, Safra, and everybody over there for creating this forum. I think social media, and everybody is talking about it. We know and we are really seeing organization moving heavily towards it. But I guess like everything else, like every other tool that is used for managing businesses and brands, social media also has its pros and cons. Now, very important for us as the people who run businesses to understand these nitty-gritties so that we just optimize the best use of social media. And when it comes to our brands, now I work for Rainco as a Chief Operating Officer. It has become an integral part of our brand communication campaign. It's not an integral part anymore. It's not a choice, or it's not an option anymore. It's literally what we center our communications around. So it has become the central medium of the communications that we carry out. Now, if you want to understand what we use, but I want to really talk about the context in which we use these social media platforms. Relating to that, we have three individual objectives that we try to achieve. One is our conversation with the consumers, our users, and the customers. On the other side, our conversation with the potential employees. That is very important for us because we as an organization that we are stretching, we're expanding, we see a lot of opportunities that's coming our way. Now, it's very important that we position ourselves as a brand, not just a product brand, but also a corporate brand. And one of the key customer base there is the potential employees that we are going to target. The third aspect is the rest of the stakeholders, which is the general public, may or may not interact with our brands as of now, but probably their opinions, their influences may shape the usage of our brand or advocation of our brand. So these are the three large objectives that we bear in mind before we actually devise or put down a communication plan behind digital and behind social media. Now, basis that each of these objectives is designed with a key tool in mind, a social media platform of each of these objectives is different. And the approach we've taken is clearly when we want to reach out our consumers, the customers, we picked Facebook as the primary social media platform. Coming out from, I think we all know in Sri Lanka, the most reached social media platform. Now, when you look at all platforms in Sri Lanka, the Facebook penetration is about close to about 70%. But especially when you look at mobile platforms, using mobile as accessing social media, Facebook hits about 90 plus. So it's very important that we are using this medium to reach out our consumer base. We are talking to Sri Lanka's Rainco penetration in terms of household, it's surpassing almost 100%. That means every household there is one or two, or one or more individuals who's being a brand user of ours. And therefore we need to really pick on something like Facebook that will take us to all the individual consumers. Now when it comes to the second one, which we use LinkedIn, because that's where my TG is, the objective of building a corporate brand reputation and really ensuring the potential employees see organization as one of the best places that they can join to continue on their career developments. And when it comes to the general public, obviously, we use a combination of one of these tools. We also go into, that's where we go into a lot of an approach on PR, where we use multiple platforms, a combination of platforms, primarily driven by the website and some of the social media related PR sites across the platforms. So that's the kind of approach we take. We very carefully consider the TG we want to reach, the target audience, and the objective behind reaching those target audience, and carefully pick one primary social media platform and be supported by rest of the complementary social media platforms.
I think you've got a very strategic plan as to how you're going to run your social media. I really love that you've divided it into your target audience, figured out which channels work for each audience. Have you run a campaign that's given you very startling results, where you may have thought that it would have worked best on, like, say, Facebook, but it's run better on other platforms, and that's how you figured out the dynamics of it?
Yeah, of course. I think we've been exploring on this space. Like I always say this and make this statement. Today, everybody's talking about digital marketing or social media marketing. But my personal belief is it is not that we are doing digital marketing. Ideally, we are doing marketing in a digital era. So literally, everything that you need to do or what you're doing needs to resonate or reconnect through a social media platform. Gone are the days where you depend on your communications only on one or two channels, as in terms of ATL. TV used to be and is continue to be the biggest medium that is attracting investment on marketing. However, the organizations that's depending only on TV as a medium is drastically dropping, and we see that everybody who wants to do a radio, TV, or a press is coupling it up with a social media, and that is where the role of using social media as an omni-channel management tool is really kicking in. So we, like for the 3 years ago, we kind of devised a communication strategy, and we really wanted to take this shift between coming out of TV as a primary media to moving into social media and digital tools. And I could go back to one of the campaigns that we did, which brought in some significant results. This is, we named it Tagidala. Now, I'm sure most of you out there would know us for umbrella manufacturing, but there is also not umbrella, but we have many other products under the brand name of Rainco. So the second biggest product category under the brand name of Rainco is the mosquito nets. And now what we really did is that if you notice, I just want to bring out one particular element of all of our brands. Now, all of these brands was once upon a time a commodity in the Sri Lankan market. You wouldn't think using an umbrella unless there's rain outside. This is what it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And you wouldn't think using a mosquito net unless you are really pushed by the mosquitoes and they're really getting you on your nerves. But what we were trying to do, what we were able to do over the last 2 or 3 years with the transformation of the organization, is to make these brands to be used or to be make it relevant for anything other than the reason why you would obviously use for. I mean,
okay, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, so what we want to do is, we said in our communication strategy, we said, look, I don't want anyone to use umbrella for rain, but figure out ways how we are going to make other people use umbrella for everything else but for rain. Because you don't need a strategy for getting people to use your product when it's raining, right? So what we really figured out is that we wanted to give them more reasons, very relevant reasons for my consumers who would then think of using our products. So we came up with this campaign, Tagidala. Tagidala is something that we said, look, it's important that you keep yourself upgraded. It's important that you look after your health and wellness. Now, what I don't want you to do is to compromise on the smallest area, as in, what's the point of a huge mosquito net, but if one small mosquito can get into it? There's no point, right? So therefore, you try to upgrade yourself, get a new mosquito net, and we gift you for that idea, for that thinking. We reward you for that thinking. That's the concept behind Tagidala. So every time you want to go and get a new mosquito net, you are really rewarded with so much more. And this is a campaign we wanted to take out to everyone in the country. And of course, we started off primarily as a medium in radio. But eventually we realized that people want to continuously engage, and radio and TV being a one-side medium, it's not a two-way communication medium. Halfway through the campaign, we decided to take it to mobile and digital. And what we saw after that was quite phenomenal, because we saw the response rate with ATL was somewhere around 7 to 8%, as in from the number of people who called in who actually reimbursed a unique code. But when it went digital, it just elevated from that 7 to 8 level to almost hitting 30% of conversion. Now, this is something that we incorporated both mobile technology and digital technologies, working together with mobile as well as digital, where we saw a significant increase purely because that engagement element was so high between our customers and consumers. And today we know we are living in an era of instant gratification. No one wants to be in this whole space where they see a TV ad on the TV, then they write entry to us. By the time it reaches to us in the post, it takes 3-4 days, and then figure out and inform them back whether they're a winner or not. Everyone wants to try their luck now, and everyone wants to know whether they're going to be winning now or not. So I think that is the sole purpose behind driving a social media, an absolute increase of conversion. And we were able to really over deliver, kind of achieved and exceed all our KPIs with related to the campaign, purely by bringing into a media and a mobile led digital media and a mobile led platform. So we've had many, after that, it's been an integral part of how we used to manage and run campaigns, as now it's purely digital centric, and every other media comes in support to the digital media.
Yeah. So if you think about it, like obviously because the old mediums such as TV, radio, they're very one-sided. I'm not unmute. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. So basically, when we're looking at the older mediums such as radio and all of that, because it's, as you said, it's a one-sided conversation, you can't really get feedback or any response to it. So how do you build your brand, such a strong brand personality, when you have this whole negative feedback, there's comments, because it's a huge issue that most companies fail. When I go into agents, like when I was in an agency and I went to pitching for digital, the first question they ask you, but what if they comment negatively? What if they create posts that have negative connotations? What if we can't respond to these things as fast as possible? Wouldn't it deter our brand more than make it a strong personality of a brand? So how do you face such situations as a brand itself?
Yeah, so Safra, it comes down to managing reality, right? Now we should be happy. It's our attitude. I think, as always, any good tool, as I said in the beginning, and it goes same with social media tools. It'll have its pros and cons, right? If you evaluate the communication tools that's available to build strong brands, I know that this particular point is always thrown in as a negative. But I think we take a slightly different perspective to it. We should be happy. It's just like a customer. We know that for a fact. We've heard and we've read in literature that only 10 to 15% of the customers actually complain. So Safra, what do you think the rest do when they have a problem?
I don't know. What do they do?
They just silently walk out from your brand or just badmouth about your brand. All right. That's going to destroy another set of customers who are quite loyal to you. So what I'm trying to get at is that if someone is coming out with a negative comment, if they are talking to you about, and you're creating a platform for them to open up themselves, you're going to resolve it then and there, rather than letting it boil outside and you're not aware of it, which can result in only much more or many other negative aspects for your business or your brand. So it first starts with the attitude and the approach to it. When you think, this phenomenon of problems are good, when you address that in your mindset, then digital media is a platform that you can really elevate your resolving that problems which are good problems directly with your consumer or the customer base. Because every other media, you don't have a way to understand what they feel about your brand, understand, even if it is positive or negative, understand their sentiments around brand. I think what is important is understanding themselves as customer, because when they don't have a way to communicate how they feel about it, they mostly leave your brand, or they might go and create some negative sentiments around your brand. So social media has this ability to tell you, to kind of get you the understanding of how consumers perceive. We know in marketing, no matter how good the reality is, perception is everything. If you're perceiving me to be negative, if you're perceiving my brand to be not so good, if you're perceiving my brand is not fulfilling its promise, it is as good as reality. So what I need, the best thing I can do to facilitate for me to understand what you think about my brand, then immediately ensure that we are resolving it, or we are addressing it. Sometimes we have to come to terms with it. I mean these days, if you go into my social media accounts, the largest number of message I get is that, how come your product is not available when we want it the most? And my team and I personally get involved in responding to customers. I tell them, look, we are really sorry. I know it's not available, but it is that the rain is significantly pushed up the demand. But get us your details, give us your addresses. We will come back to you and we will give you a solution as much as we can, or as early as possible. Advocating, accepting that there is a problem and giving them the next best solution is going to really elevate your brand's positioning, your brand's image, and its sentiment with your customer and the consumer base. So our approach to this is, problems are good. You should be happy that the customers are coming back with, if they are, with negative comments, with complaints, with every other issue, because you have a direct access to him to understand his psychological sentiment and give him solutions, or at least console him that you will be able to give the best alternatives so that the customer is continuously disappointed. So we have many tools, obviously, that we deal with it. Now, I don't want to actually talk about some of my digital media partners. I hope Kabir, if he's listening to it, he's my partner in the digital media space. Yeah. Of course, my digital media managing agency have come up with multiple tools how we address these, and we want to be very genuine. We want to be as close as possible really not to do a patchwork or to kind of do a workaround, but to really understand what the consumer sentiment is and present our facts and give our solutions to satisfy them. And that way, you don't have to be worried about being in social media. You should be very happy that this platform gives you full understanding and a mode to address their concerns.
So that brings in a very interesting part of it, just because you mentioned Kabir. One whole aspect of actually identifying an agency is actually supposed to first understand what is your product, what are your services, how does it work, who are your competitors. So obviously you've been talking about your brand, but then I'm sure that you have amazing competitors who keep you invigorated to run your business. So how did you evaluate the competitors' landscape and compared it to yours? And what did you learn from that experience?
So I think, you see, I think different categories, different industries have varying level of competitor intensities. Now, with regard to us, we do have in each of our brand we are faced with many competition. The competition comes in two folds for us. It comes in e-commerce suppliers of our products. That is kind of they import directly, which does not have any manufacturing. But another component comes from the other local brands who are engaged in manufacturing. Now, again, as I said, the way we approach is very specific of each of this competition type, because the propositions are quite different. Now, what we always try to do is that we are not an organization who's very product specific when it comes to driving our social media content. I mean, if you ever go into take a Rainco Facebook page, you will hardly see content that is related directly to our product. Because what we don't want to do is to follow the competitors, and what I see is that many competitors, they talk about their product directly in the social media space. What we want to do is that we say, look, everybody understand, everybody knows what the product is, and we are quite keen in promoting content on the values of our brands. So there's a slight difference in promoting a product and a service or promoting a value. What we want to do is to people to understand what we stand for and the kind of values that we and our brands drive, and through which we always try to bring in the relevance of our brand. Because I don't think that I have to go and educate or talk about my products of whether it's umbrellas or mosquito nets or any other brand, because most of my customer base, they're loyal customers who understand what we do. So that is something significantly I see as a differentiator between how we manage and how the competition is managed. When it comes to imports and the products, what we always see is that we kind of identify and highlight the larger impact that Rainco is making in this country. We have directly working for us for more than 650 people who's in-house, but we also have another 500 plus sort of families who's working with us in the whole outsourcing model, where we go to villages, we take the work. What we have done, or we are trying to do increasingly, is to involve all of these people in many ways possible to try and talk about our brand to the other people. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to go talk about Rainco from Rainco. We wanted to engage our customers, our employees, and also many other stakeholders who forms opinions into the conversation. And that's one way we clearly want to differentiate. If you look at our content, mostly it is PR driven. It is created by our partners. And also we always involve external well-wishers and people who really want to endorse our brands with experience. So that's a kind of different approach we have taken considering the competition.
That's really interesting to hear how you practically do it in day-to-day life. with your social media campaigns. How much do you think, like in consideration of time, as well as funding, as well as money to actually run this campaign, how much do you think you should invest in a campaign at the beginning? Should you go high first, or should you gradually go up? How much do you think you should invest in such a platform?
So that decision is mostly, again, very subjective, Safra, because each of the campaign has its objectives, and each of the campaign has its timelines in which we execute. Now, let me take some examples on how we kind of really do this in practicality. Now, if I was just talking about the Tagidala campaign, which we had a very clear timeline in mind, so which has to be a 3 months drive that we wanted to really elevate its awareness. So in situations like this, obviously we want many as consumers to engage early on in the campaign, so that they have enough time to take certain actions. So in a campaign like this, obviously we would push a lot of investment to create the reach and the penetration in the messaging in the first part of the campaign. And then we will slow down. So roughly, I mean, if you look at the timeline, if it's 3 months, within the first 6 weeks, we would invest at least about 60 to 65% of our total campaign amount to kind of go all out and create more frequency of messaging. And then eventually we slow it down and act more like a reminder to that initial burst of communications. Now, so that's one approach where we go on a burst and then slow down and continue to remind until the full space is done. Now, as of today, we have been doing a campaign. If you've seen the Yaha campaign, it's quite a, I would say, not a controversial, but a slightly different approach we have taken. That is to drive the messages of being safe and adopting and practicing health guidelines in the face of COVID-19 pandemic. Now, what we did, when we did this, we wanted to actually, get out of the clutter, because everyone was talking about how important it is to wear a mask, have your hand hygiene and social distancing. But what we realize across Colombo is that somewhat is there, but outstation, it's no one really bothers about it. Everybody is so complacent, and they all just living their normal life, less realizing we are still at risk. Yeah. So we wanted to come out with a very positive approach to this whole messaging, and we took a very traditional cultural element to kind of combine it with the insight of how you need to take responsibility for following health guidelines. Now, in something like this, we continue to do it. Now, if you look at our presence in social media, is a continuous presence, because we don't want to create a hype and then fade off. We have decided that we will continue to talk about this message as long as we have the risk if you're not safe, if you're not careful. So obviously what I'm trying to get at here is the objectivity and the kind of goal behind each campaign tells us how we want to approach our budgets, and when in terms of phasing out how we want to spend our budgets. Now, each of this again has its own cost. Now, approximately, if it's a brand driven campaign, if it's an activation campaign, then we spend large amount of investment behind it, because it's not only the content in the social media, but there are so many other activations we have to do. But if it's a messaging kind of a campaign where we are doing right now, where we want to really keep the public awareness high and influence them to follow practices, we kind of put substantial amount of money behind it, but to ensure the objectives is met until we do that. So it's a continuous process. Whenever we have our core campaigns, now that we are planning a Teachers' Day campaign, which is one of our key campaigns in the calendar, we would invest roughly about maybe 25% of our marketing spends we will put behind some of those core campaigns that we drive. So the approach is very subjective, and each of the campaign we critically evaluate its objectives and what do we want to achieve out of it before deciding this.
Great. So obviously there are other brands other than Rainco that are doing an amazing job at putting together social media campaigns. Is there any brands that I locally as well as maybe globally that you've been looking at as a benchmark to see how well they've been doing and what sort of things may work for you as well? Is there any brands you would like to mention?
If you look at Sri Lanka space, and I think I don't know whether it's coincidental, but if you look at the top brands, I mean, if I take Facebook, for example, if you look at the top brands in Sri Lanka, which has the highest number of likes in Facebook, it's primarily telco brands. So it's starting off with Dialog, then Mobitel, followed by Ikman. So if you look at all these guys, they have a very clear reasoning behind why they need to have reaching out large number of people, obviously because of the brand dynamics are such. Now, what we see is there are some very good brands that is managing not just the number of likes, I think, but totally creating a strong omni-channel platform. Again, what I'm trying to say that here is that not just having number of likes, but to engage consumers, engage customers in a very interactive, in a very intimate manner. I think one of the biggest reasoning behind social media is to always have this. Now, I know if you look at the way that we approach, we look at three primary benefits behind why we want to manage our social media. I mean, why we want to drive or where we want to focus. Number one is on brand building, because it is no doubt it has become the most profitable digital marketing platforms that is really going to help your brand visibility. And among the potential customers or the current customers. And this is giving us real benefit for bigger audience as well. And the other most important aspect is managing customers and servicing customers is something that I don't see many brands actually do in the country. And that's something, and because of the sensitivity, I don't really want to, even though you want me to mention some brands, I don't want to talk about Sri Lankan brands by name. Hope that's all right with you. So that's something I see as a gap. I see there are many brands who's doing a lot better in terms of attracting high number of people into their platforms and disseminating information or content, but using as a platform to supply or serving the customer is not something that I really see. Now, if you can combine the two, is where you can actually increase your brand recognition in the social media space. And since you also spoke about some of the global brands, I think I don't have any problem in really talking about global brands. I would like to go to one of my favorites is Nike. I don't know whether you had this experience. Now, Nike, if you go to their Twitter handle, right, you would find that they have a 24/7 customer service platform. And their strategy is that they're so excellent. What happens is it has one of the strongest customer service accounts on Twitter globally. So what they do is they feature a dedicated Twitter account. It's called Team Nike. It's quite different to their Nike brand platform. Now, what Team Nike does is that they provide support on a 7 days a week. But I tell you what is even more unique is they do it in 7 different languages.
Okay.
So it really disseminating, of course, the 7 languages is the topmost spoken 7 languages in the world. So what they're doing is that they're creating, like, no one will ever be worried or bothered about buying a Nike product, because they know no matter where they are in the world, wherever, whatever they purchase, there is support and there is reliable support. I re-emphasize the word, reliable and consistent support, right, for any of their customers. So this will give them a huge credible factor, a huge imagery proposition for their customers. Now, when a customer mentions Nike's main Twitter handle, and anytime you go, you can try it out, Safra. If you go to Twitter and then if you mention the Twitter handle of Team Nike, you have an instant response coming from the Team Nike agents. If you just mention it, and they will come and ask you, okay, what do you want to do? I saw you mentioned the Team Nike handle. Do you have a problem? Can I help you? You know, how can I really sort it out? So, I mean, this is the type of, this is a best in class world practice that I really wanted to shed some light on. And like, see if some of our brands and organization can really use social media to that extent. It's going to be phenomenal. So this is one of the best practices that will really teach us how can we pay attention to all customers and customer service issues and be kind to them. Their lingo, being very respectful to the customers, being kind to them in all scenarios. And I think I'll also address this particular practice, also addressing to one of the questions you asked before. How do you handle passive complaints?
Yeah.
So, you know, these passive complaints, as I said, if it is left unaddressed, then that can easily cause a rift between the vendor and the customer. It can always create a rift between the brand because the customers start thinking, I mean, these guys are not responding to me. They are not, you know, really giving the solution I want because they are not really keen or caring about me. So that kind of a sentiment is something that you can really avoid if you adopt such best practices that you have around the world.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing you brought out that Nike actually uses their customer service platform on Twitter, because what I've noticed is that in Sri Lanka also, if you message them on Facebook, you may not get a response as if you were tweeting them on Twitter. For example, you would never be able to contact Uber on Facebook or even Instagram. But if you message them on Twitter, immediately they will give you a call. They will actually ask you what your problem was. For example, I know recently one of my friends left his bags in the vehicle. He tried to contact Uber numerous times, but when he tweeted, it worked. Even with Dialogue being one of the largest platforms, when you message them on Facebook, you will have to wait quite a bit to actually get a response. But on Twitter, immediately there is a person there who tweets back to you, asks you what your issue is. Do you feel that people believe that Twitter is a better platform to raise these issues, or do you feel that they've just realized that it's more effective because there's more of a reach from it? What do you think about that?
Now, specifically, if you look at, see the behavior of Twitter as a social media platform is very interesting, especially in Sri Lanka, right? If you're on top of some of the stats behind social media platforms, how they perform in Sri Lanka, if you look at, of course, Facebook, as I said, is always been on top. Right. If you look at, I mean, we were looking at some stats. I think it's Stat Counter. If you can just go and check it out sometime. Stat Counter will show you how at each given period and which social media platform really perform better in the context of Sri Lanka. Now, what you see in Twitter, Twitter as a social media platform became second only to Facebook in some very specific occasions.
Yeah.
If you go down to Stat Counter, you would see in March 2020, when the whole uproar against lockdown Sri Lanka started happening, Twitter reach significantly rose. I think it went up to about 12 to 13% of usage in the March 2020. To create this hype of lockdown Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
Then it went back to its 4th or 5th position. But if you look at last year, just before the presidential election, you would see pretty much a similar behavior for Twitter use, right? And so what we see is that in certain like high pressure environment. I mean, again, this is my perception. There is no one who has concluded, but purely looking at the way the social media platform has behaved. My conclusion is that Twitter is something that is used by many people, and there is a perception behind Twitter that for something that is really important, something that is critical or urgent, people get involved in using Twitter. So this is connecting to what you was talking about. Also, it is reflecting in the certain responses that brands show. Whenever you are on Twitter, you tend to get faster responses. Just like you're calling on a police emergency number and a 191.
Yeah.
Right. So obviously, when you call a 191, everyone thinks, okay, this is serious business. But if you call a police station, take their general number, you may stay for at least 15 minutes online. By the time they get it, by the time they take your call, things would have gone south for you. So it's a perception that I think more than anything, in terms of the way that these tools are behaving, the tools are used, everyone has a perception. Just like every brand has an image built around it, I guess each social media platform is also an image built around it in different context. Now, if you go to the Western world, if you go to US or Europe or some of the developed world, the way the social media platforms are used is completely different. Twitter in those markets play a significant role because I think it also comes down to your communication style, Safra, more than anything. You know, we as Sri Lankans, and especially the Asian markets, we like to tell stories. We like to write long sentences. We want to have as many pictures as possible. So Facebook is the best platform for us. But when it comes to the developed world and some of the advanced economies in the world, they want to be direct. They want to talk to the point, and that's it.
Yeah.
And you see, this is also resonating in the type of social media tools that is used across different countries. So I think it's the perception one, and it's the way and what is expected from each of the platform that really makes this different. And what you see in Sri Lanka also, there are times that Twitter has taken the center stage next to Facebook, and most of the times it is reflecting the exact sentiments that I was sharing.
Yes, that actually comes to remind me of us, like, because you brought out the whole lockdown Sri Lanka. There were decided to shut down social media completely because of safety concerns, and then that pretty much brings your digital campaigns to a grinding halt, or it would actually only reach a very limited audience. So how do you manage your offline promotions with your social media in circumstances like that?
Yeah, so I think it's very rare. I mean, but we all know, I mean, it's a known secret, but kept as a secret. People who are in social media are not prone to any of these limitations, right? I'm sure your smile says out everything. That even when there is ban in the country, I'm sure you would have been one of those culprits who still use social media, or many others who's in this forum, because so social media and digital marketing is something that you'll never come to rest. Yes, there can be limitations. Yes, there can be certain blocks on social media, but there is always a workaround for the social consumer. Just like during the lockdown, many Sri Lankans are smart enough to continue their social life in whatever the way possible. They had closed circuit parties. They had everything sorted out for their social life. Similarly, social media users, they always dwell in the social media space, right? And what we did, in fact, even during those eras, what we did is that we continue to upgrade. We continue to be present in the social media space, because the fact is that yes, there can be limitation, but I think this is where the concept of own media and earn media comes to play. You know, you understand what I'm talking about. We in digital marketing, we look at 3 types of media, right? That is earned media, paid media, and owned media. So today, people don't have to, even though we're carrying out this program live, they don't have to worry about waking up early morning and getting ready to, just like they're going to office and come and sit in front of the computer at 9 o'clock sharp. They can always come in at their leisure. They can always go back to the Luminary platforms and watch the entire conversation. So that is why the reason, I mean, just because it's not happening right now doesn't mean that you don't have to. So if you leave the content, if you are present in the social media space, the people will see you at varying different times. But what's important is to continue your presence, the consistency, because, and those are the times when there is limited access that people want to always get some kind of an update. So in two aspects, this is important why you need to continue. We used to continue our presence. Two, as a concept of our own media. They can always come back when things are available, when there is social media available. Two, we believe that social space is something that will never rest. No matter how difficult it is, they will eventually find the workaround to get things moving and to keep themselves updated. So on that space, we somehow still continue to manage. And I think some of the best social media content actually came out during such period. If you go back to the Sri Lankan brand space.
Yes. I also think it helped that the value for advertising reduced dramatically, so you would get more reach for the dollar as well.
Absolutely.
During that time. So just before we wrap up, one final question would be, what would you say is your message to anyone who's maybe trying out social media for the first time, or they're experts as to how they can use social media for their brand value?
Yeah, so I think, again, I touched upon this slightly before. I think primarily my message is that you can look at three things. Always remember, social media is used for many things, but when it comes to your brand, when it comes to your business, it comes down to primarily three things for us. And I think this is the same set of values that you can also derive out of social media. Number one is, always remember, it's brand building. Brand building is something that you can continuously engage your customer and consumer. You know, we used to say a brand is like a masterpiece where every single day a new feature or a new element of that is added to this masterpiece. So the more you engage your consumer, the more you engage your customer, your brand proposition is going to get more and more stronger. So, and today social media is not that, I mean, there is a myth that you need a lot of money, and yes, you may need a lot of money, but the thing is, you can also start a social media presence without anything. It comes down to your content. It can be a free platform, and we know post-COVID, how many new businesses that emerged purely building their businesses on social media platform. Those businesses that we've never existed before came about purely using social media as a concept. So social media is a super powerful tool to build your brands to a largest possible level and to start off with almost free, right? So I think in this way, it is becoming a most affordable platform that you can reach out to a much larger and bigger audience. And if you know the way about, if you know the strategy behind it. And the second component is that I would request many of you to really look at social media, not just as a content provider, but to use as an omni-channel engagement tool. Provide customer service. I was talking about Nike specifically. How can you really resolve and be with your customer with these social media platforms? Where you know that 60 to 70%, some research suggests that they want immediate response, immediate resolution when it comes to their brand, who they're loyal to. Number three is the business growth. We know social interaction between businesses and customers is a growing trend, and that is increasing sales and improving brand loyalty. And therefore, it is very important that you drive business growth towards these platforms. Now, in doing this, don't be afraid of negative sentiment. We addressed this in the beginning of the conversation. Take it head on, and you should always be happy that someone is throwing a negative sentiment or a complaint to you, because you have an opportunity to address it as and when it happens. Then actually letting it go and get into a position where it's completely turning out to be disastrous for your brand or your organization. So remember these three elements. I think if you can use social media to really bring out the best using these three engagement platforms, I think certainly this will really help you to kind of come out as a successful brand on the social media space.
Great. I think Aroos has definitely given us some food for thought. He's shown us how his campaigns work for him, and also the three main points that you need to take home with you. So I hope that we wish you luck with any social media campaign that you do to build your brand, and I hope that these tips helped you. So I would like to once again thank you, Aroos, for being here with us today. And I would like to now hand over to our dear evangelist, Anton Thayalan.
Thank you, Safra.
Thank you, Safra. Thank you, Aroos, for that delightful conversation. Sadly, all good things must come to an end. So in what seems like a blink of an hour has completely passed us by. So thank you, everyone who joined in and stayed locked on. We had Ahamed Aroos from Rainco for weighing in for that wonderful conversation. And Safra, thank you for driving this conversation this fine morning. We do apologize that both our panelists, Anushka and Tharinder, couldn't join us owing to technical difficulties, but we will see them soon on our upcoming webinars. As we heard rightly, the power of social media is that it forces necessary change and can be harnessed as an idea generator or a trend mapper and even a strategic compass. But it's a case of how it's used to impress or impact. On that note, we thank H1 for being our technology partner for the third season running. Coming up in the next hour is This, That, and the Other, Season 2 with Varun. Do join in as they discuss another hot topic, as usual, today being no exception, as they dissect bias in the workplace when personal choices collide with your professional life. So stay tuned in for that, and we will see you on the other side. Enjoy the rest of the day. Stay safe, stay productive.